to describe what I do is really, client relationships, building those really solid relationships with clients, making sure that they feel supported and heard. And I really fancy myself to be a bit of a liaison. So between the client team and the internal team, and just making sure that all sides are heard and that we kind of have a harmonious relationship.
And how does that role compare to some of your previous gigs that you've had, right? Like it's a little bit different. There's a lot of skills that you're kind of bringing over from those different roles, right?
Mm-hmm. So I think every role that I've had up until this point has been different, but also rooted in client service in some shape or another. I've just always kind of been in the center of the relationship. And I think that as I was leaving my last venture and trying to find something new, I knew that I wanted to be that relationship-centric role. So that kind of has been my guiding star for my career.
What was your favorite gig before Native?
Well, I had an event planning company, which was really fun. It was challenging in every way possible, but it was an adventure. So that'd have to be it.
Starting your company is no small task at all. It's not for the faint of heart. What was probably one of the most painful, difficult things that you look back and you're like, well, at least I learned this from that?
Yeah, I think definitely all of the back end business side of things that you just really don't know are required in order to make a business run and work functionally. So those are the things where I had never had exposure to them, but I had to learn them really quickly and figure out how to do them on the fly. So challenging, but super rewarding, and has helped me be more business minded as I, move into the next phase of my life. So
do you feel like it derailed the trajectory of your career, or do you think it accelerated it?
That's a really good question. Something that I think about a lot because it is kind of an interesting detour. But I actually think that it accelerated my career because it taught me things that it would take years and years to learn that, the trajectory I was going before. So I think that it was this throw me into the deep end and really teach myself and learn from others and really get uncomfortable and, see how that all panned out. So
yeah,
I think it accelerated it.
I would agree. Otherwise I wouldn't have asked you the question, but whenever we first met, I could tell that was the case. I mean, you spoke with experience on some things that other people are still trying to figure out, so I could pick up on that pretty quickly.
Well, it was a really that whole thing started when I was 26 and I'm 30 now. And I feel like I've lived some years. So
I can relate. So you've joined Native at such a, we'll just call it interesting time, right? Quarantine and all of that. As you've gotten to know your colleagues through Zoom tiles and things like that, and the occasional hangout, what's something that the team has learned about you that maybe they were surprised to find out, either just like personal quirks or just different things about how you work?
I think that a lot of people, I'm kind of shy when I first meet people, but then once I feel comfortable, I'm like very comfortable. So I think that even through, the Zoom meetings and the Google Hangouts, we've been able to kind of convey personalities for each of us. So I've actually been pleasantly surprised how quickly I felt comfortable and just kind of felt embraced, certainly.
What about clients? Do you think they have the same idea of that when they start working with us? Do you think they have an expectation of I don't know if comfort is the right word, but how quickly they understand the team and how things go? Like, what do you think they're expecting? What are they anticipating when they start working with us?
Yeah, I think that depends on whether or not they've worked with, another agency before. But I think a lot of times the clients come in and they're kind of nervous to sort of entrust groups with things that are really important to them. Maybe they don't have the bandwidth to give it, the kind of attention that they want to, whatever the reason may be. But I think there is a level of apprehension sometimes. And I love that moment where they instantly trust you, like you've earned their trust and you kind of click into this next gear where, they know that we've got their backs and we're moving forward full steam ahead. but I think it's totally normal to start off and be like, I don't know how this is going to go. But I really like to make that transition happen quickly to where they're like, okay, this is going to be great. So
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of clients who've been burned in the past, and they feel like sometimes when they start, they almost want to do the job for us, or just almost micromanaging because they're afraid we won't do it right. They've seen other
mhm.
groups who've missed deadlines or just kind of mail it in. Do you have like techniques or things that you're trying to do early on to show like, hey, we've got this, like
Mhm.
we've got a process, like this is going to go well? Do you have ways you approach it that way?
Yeah, definitely. I think that my favorite thing about when I first meet a client is really trying to get to know, who they are, like what makes them tick, what kind of communication style do they have, and I try to meet them wherever that is, so they don't have to adjust to me. I'm adjusting to them, and I want to make sure that it's a seamless. I want to be an extension of the team. I don't ever want them to feel like, oh, well, this is our third party partner. I want them to feel like, oh, native, they're just us, and so trying to really, learn about them learn about their families, where they come from, what their backgrounds are in. Maybe they've had an interesting path to where they are today, and we can kind of talk about that as a commonality. Just trying to really develop a relationship right off the bat. But, everyone's different. So you have to kind of meet them wherever they are in their level of comfortability.
It's so true. I've learned over the years that some clients want to know every little detail and they want that communicated to them. And there's others that like sum it up, like it needs to be
Yep.
quick. Usually
Yep.
depends on where they sit in the organization, right? But
Sure.
I think the one thing every client appreciates is that I think they see that we're really trying to understand their business very quickly. And I think that wins over trust. That's the
Hmm.
fastest way I know is like, we're invested in learning this.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's something I learned about Native right off the bat is the level of intentionality that you guys put forth with everything that you're doing, and the time that you take is really unique. If I were in a client's position, I'd feel really comforted by that. You at the end of the day, we're stewards of their dollars and of their decisions, and so if they can't trust us to make the right decisions, then it's not a long-term relationship.
So Andrew, you're working with a pretty driven team. I think each discipline here is you're meeting people who are pretty motivated to do good work. What everybody's motivated by different things. Like what motivates you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I come from a family. My dad's an entrepreneur, and he has been incredibly driven my entire life, his entire life. My mom's the same way. It's just been kind of this mentality that I've grown up with. You know, being successful in whatever that looks like doesn't have to be monetary, but just feeling pride in what you do. And we had a rule growing up. You had to say four things positive before you could say one thing negative. That's really framed the way that I look at most situations because, we're in an industry that things change really frequently, and being able to reframe it and say, okay, this might be kind of a negative, but here are all the really positive things. And here's what we can draw out of that, has really helped me, maintain that drive and keep going forward. Because if you can find a positive, you can keep going and you can keep making lemonade out of lemons. So
That's a great rule. You're basically only limited to 20% bad. You got to find the other 80%.
it's challenging, but when it's ingrained in you from birth, you start to get the hang of it. So
I was talking with an entrepreneur group yesterday, actually, and one of the things I said is expect pain. Like there will be pain, but if you look at it as like it's a rush of information, it's going to be a whole lot easier to digest and try to figure out, what do you do with that information versus just sit there and, like, oh, this hurts, like, and then do
yeah.
that for a week, and it's very distracting. So your dad's rule is that's a great rule
Yeah,
to
it's all about
follow.
reframing the way that you look at things, and challenging yourself to not. The first instinct is maybe, oh, that's unfortunate, but if you can push past that, you can really see the opportunities.
I think that has a lot of ways, it relates a lot to client relationships as well. I mean, I think a lot of times in my past, I've been at places where I was pretty far removed from the client. I didn't get to meet them as much. I didn't really connect with them. And so I didn't care as much. And then when something gets communicated through three or four different levels and finds us, it's really easy to look at that and complain because you don't know, there's no empathy there and you don't understand. And I think, we're at that size and our processes are such where we actually usually get to have like a personal relationship with our clients, even the people doing the work, like they can name them
Hmm.
by their first name. And I think that helps. And you understand like where you understand their world and where all this is coming from. And I think it makes for, I don't know, there's fewer of those negative conversations of like, oh, why are we doing this? It's like,
Absolutely.
I understand their world and how can I help them out?
Yeah, 100%. I think you have to understand where they're coming from and why they're asking something, because then the seemingly frustrating request or comment is rooted in something that's tangible to them and it matters to them, so we need to solve it for them. And so just helps the
Yeah.
process.
Whenever I was a creative director in my past, you think that, design and copy and some of those things are just like the most important things in the world because they are the most important things to you. It really helps to put it in the context of the client and realize like, oh yeah, I guess they are trying to accomplish that. And this is how I fit into that,
Right.
that perspective and context really helps.
It sure does.
What's been one of your favorite projects to work on so far, or things that maybe you're looking forward to doing since joining Native?
Yeah. Since I've only been here for a month, I think that I've enjoyed all of the different clients that I've been working on. They're all in such different categories, which I really find enjoying because, I like to learn about different things. And so, having them in all different kind of categories is really great. I'm looking forward to onboarding new clients and, seeing what those relationships look like. And, I love that I get to touch so many different things. So I'm kind of looking forward to all of it right now. And just, I'm enjoying meeting everybody and developing those relationships. And, I'm just excited to see kind of how it all unfolds.
What's something about the team that as you start this new job, you probably had a few ideas in your mind of what it would be like. What maybe stood out or surprised you once you've joined and now have gotten to know like our processes and our team and those types of things? Like any surprises?
I think that knowing a couple of people here before I started helped, because I think that there were people who, more enjoyed where they were before and made a conscious decision to come to Native, which I think is a really interesting thing when you can, pull people who are happy with what they're doing currently and maybe, see what this new thing is like. I'm continually surprised by the fact that Native's only 5 years old. I see their processes that are still very startup like, which I love. But then there are also moments of it that feel like you guys have been around forever. So it's a really nice duality to kind of watch, just because I was in that startup mentality for 3 years. And so seeing the different things like, oh yeah, that's how what I would have done, because it makes the most sense when you're in that frame of mind. So that's kind of been a nice little surprise, just to see kind of like there's still so many like lean techniques that you're using, but still feels like, people are like, oh well, since I've been here for 6 months or a year, and I'm like, it feels like you've been here for 5 years. And so I feel like I've been here longer. So it's an interesting, I don't think you could probably recreate that. It's very unique.